Welcome to Always the Other, conversations about writing from the margins. I'm LD Farrell.
And I'm Shameem Smillie. Welcome to the conversation. Hello, and thanks for checking out our new podcast, Always the Other, conversations about writing from the margins.
In this podcast, we'll talk with authors, journalists, documentarians, publishers, bloggers, and others to discuss the challenges and triumphs of being a non-mainstream storyteller. In other words, writers just like us.
Exactly. The publishing world is still pretty much vanilla, and so we face different challenges to get our stories out into the world. And we believe that talking about it, sharing our stories and experiences can only help all of us.
It's really true though, right? Because I think about when we first met and, right? We met on the workshop and we decided to meet offline and do our own little Zoom. And you started talking about you're from Wales and, mixed race and your dad. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my story. How is my story your story? Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I think about this a lot as to, because I am not sociable, as in like meeting strangers sociable. I'm definitely an introverted extrovert, I would say, because I can turn it on for work, but outside of that, I am very much an introvert, I think. But you reached out to me, if you remember, and you asked me about pictures.
Well, you got Prince posters.
Yeah. And honestly, that is a sign. I'm telling you, anyone that's proactively messaged me because they've seen the pictures, I just know that it's going to be a good conversation. And everything you said, I just thought, oh my God, we're like sisters from another mother or something. Yeah.
Really. I mean, it's really amazing to me, but it's also, it just to me is sort of proof of what we're talking about, which is that even though you're from 6,000, 9,000, whatever it is, some enormous amount of.
It's a long way away.
It's a long way away. I've forgotten how far it is. Anyway, but you're in Wales. I'm on the West Coast of the United States. That we have so many things in common, and not only in our families, but then like out in society, right? Because we are people of color and we're not, quote unquote, the mainstream, that we've had a lot of similar experiences of being, treated as a second-class citizen, or, our stories not having the same value. And I think that's true about writing, as well. So I just think that the sisterhood that we have developed because of where we came from, like you, and like even in your writing, you're a tech person, which, believe me, you make fun of me, but that's okay. I do my best. But it's like in your writing journey, when you started writing, what were the kinds of first things you were writing? Were you kind of aware of this difference that we had?
No, well, because we talked about this before. I started writing when I was really young, and it was always on topics that other people chose for me, I think. I had a big, I don't know, not epiphany, but major moment in lockdown where I was experiencing, I don't know, it was like I was seeing and hearing and feeling everything from in a really magnified way. It just made me want to scream, and it made me just want to say, I need to embrace myself. I need to embrace the fact that I'm different. I've always, throughout my life, even from being really young, my differences have been weaponized against me. So the fact that I'm so different has almost been used as always a negative. Not always, but the people that love me, the people that really take the time to get to know me, don't believe that. But others, I don't know. If I piss somebody off, the first thing that will come out when I was a kid is my color. First thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's used as a weapon. And why? Why is because it's somehow, that became the divider, right? Because it's easy. It's on the outside. You can't hide that.
No. It happened like when I was growing up because, and I know this is where we've got some slight differences. I grew up in a very white environment. Very white. The only ones. No, it was me and a black kid in the class. When I joined the army very young, after leaving school, and I was the only one there. I was always, and then when in the army, there weren't many women. And then I joined like, the workforce when I left, and in tech, I was the only woman, and I was the only woman of color, person of color, really. It
Yeah.
was just majority white all the time. And I don't know, it just makes you feel more different. It makes you feel more, in the other space, call it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a couple things. And you're right. We had very different upbringings that way because like my family was very we had different ethnicities in my family. My town, I'm from Berkeley, California. So it's like, if anybody knows that history and the hippies in the 60s and all that stuff, it's like I lived in a diverse family. I lived in a diverse neighborhood. I went to a diverse schools. But what that did for me is not prepare me for after high school
Yeah.
because that's just not like how the country is, right? So I grew up in this like really integrated environment. And that's not to say everything was like, peachy keen and blah, 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 like as if we never experienced any racism. I don't mean that. But I mean that, I was around a lot of different perspectives and things like that. So what I was used to in a family and in a town and all like that, when you're growing up around a lot of different people is, and I'm not saying like again, I'm not saying there was never any racism, things like that. That's not true. There were, but we were surrounded by enough people that kind of took me as a person. And I think one of the biggest problems or issues or obstacles to overcome in our storytelling and publishing, whatever, is that mainstream people tend to look at people who are non-mainstream, people on the margins, as like blocks. If you're Black, this is what you're like. If you're, whatever, if you're Asian American, you're like this, and blah, blah. And so they don't ever scratch the surface to find out that we are people and that
Yeah.
we have all these different stories and different experiences and things. And so, like, I was a documentarian for, I mean, I still consider myself one, but for a good 30 years, I made all kinds of American history documentary films. And then I tried to get some of my own off the ground. I tried to get Black West off the ground 20 plus years ago, and I couldn't get money for it. Only thing I could get money for was Black people being slaves or Black people during Jim Crow. That was it. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole
Stereotypes.
story of Black people in America, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that,
Similar.
I'm sorry.
No, similar, but different. That I think that's the common thread, I think, for me and you, I mean.
But that's the deal. It's like we're people and we have stories and we have backgrounds and we have histories and we have fantasies and we have imagination. And it's like if you don't fit the mold of what makes a certain group comfortable, somehow, that they discount it or don't want to hear it or whatever. Like, for me, it's like Black folks, our story is more than it
Yeah.
includes, but it is more than slavery and Jim Crow, you
But
know?
yeah, and it's more, and I mean, there's more to it than just the color of your skin, isn't it? Because, you can have black assholes, brown assholes, um, black brilliant people. It's just the same in terms of good, bad, and evil and all of those elements. But I think sometimes people look at us, they make a judgment on, how we are, who we are, how we think,
Yep.
or are often surprised, you have to justify where you're from. Because I think my family confuses people because my sister's black, my mother's like white, my brother's a bit darker than me. So we're a bit of a rainbow family. And I think it's confusing. And people just want to know. So that I meet somebody and they'll say, "Where are you from?" And I'll say, "Wales." And then they'll say, "Where are you really from?" And I'll say, "I'm really from Wales." And that, or they'll say, "Oh, your name's a bit strange." And I'm like, it's not strange to me, kind of thing. And then they'll say, "Can I call you something for short? Because, I can't say your name." And I'm like, no, no. If I started calling you Dick, then you'd have an issue. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, why is it okay? Because I have a non-typical name
Right.
to shorten it. So it's just weird stuff like that, I think. And that's from like being really young and
Yeah.
having a non-standard name, not John or Mary or I don't know, things like that.
But then it always makes you feel like the other, right?
Yes,
It's like
yes.
you can't, why can't, you're from Wales, you're born and raised in Wales, you're Welsh, that's it. I mean, but people make you feel like, you know, you've got to be from someplace else because
Yeah.
you don't look like the typical Welsh person or something, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's why I was really excited. Do you remember a couple of years ago when like DEI became cool, diversity, equity, inclusion.
Mhm.
Everybody was talking about it.
Yep.
But I don't know, in my experience, it's the brown and black people that are trying to fix the problems,
Yep.
not the perpetrators. And I'm just like, but it's similar to why we're doing this, I think, is because, you've gotta the impetus is not on us to educate. And that's like that I think is a message. If you want to know something, bloody Google it. Go and do a little teeny bit of reading or watch a TikTok video, but don't ask me to educate you. Do you know what I mean?
Right. But also to be open, like I can only imagine this because I'm not all white, but when a white person meets another white person, that it's like, oh, where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. But when you meet me, give me that same benefit of the
Yes.
doubt. Oh, where are you from? What's your what do you like? Whatever. Not just, oh, you're black, you're my black friend, and as if that has some meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, it does in a sense, right? Because we were both raised, even though,
Yeah.
1,000 miles apart, to that white was the standard. White was right. Right is like the goal in a way.
Yeah.
It wasn't said that way, but you knew that, like on television when we were kids, like, right, it was mostly
Yeah.
there were the few shows and things, but in general, it's only
Yeah.
been, what, the last maybe 15 years, probably, it seems like, where there's a lot more, at least here. I don't know about you, about in the
No,
UK.
it's probably the same, but I've spoken to other people, and I think, whether you're mixed race or, 100% black or 100% brown, I think the common thread is that most of us had a massive period of our growing up lives and even adult lives where we wished we were white. I know I did.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
not in the sense that it's in a societal sense, wishing that you're white, in the sense that I'm tired of people calling me their black friend, or I'm tired of people wanting me to or not expecting me to be able. How many times has someone said to me, "Oh, you're so articulate"? I mean, like, I'm incapable of speaking the language because my skin is brown. I mean, see, you know what I mean? Like, so in that sense, yeah, you want to be like normal,
well, that's
right?
that's what I was gonna say. I think wanting to be white in the sense of having the ability to blend in. I wanted to be the gray person. I wanted to be not noticed just for just for the color of my skin, basically.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to disappear and just be like everybody else and not be
Yeah.
singled out for anything.
Be able to walk into a room and not have people go like that, which has happened to me.
Is it?
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh,
I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if that's
oh
not
yeah. I've had people, like, start like that, like, you know, and it
had it
kind
in
of
my
makes
I've
us
had it in my
feel.
job, but not well, I feel sure not because of my color, but just because I'm a woman in a man's world.
Yeah.
I go into a meeting and there's blokes sitting there and they
Yeah.
see them looking behind me and I'm looking behind me and I'm like, who are they looking for? And they're looking for the person that's going to run the meeting. And
Yep.
I'm like, oh, it's me kind of thing. And I
Yep.
sit down. I used to be offended, but now I find it very, very funny. It hasn't happened for a couple of years, but
Yeah.
towards the latter part, I just thought it was hilarious. I sat there and talked about handbags and hair and makeup while they're all like thinking, looking at the door, waiting for it to open for the
The
man
guy.
to come in, take charge. So yeah. But yeah, I think as my confidence grew, I changed my view on it and I stopped looking at it as a slur on me personally, kind of thing.
Well, it's how a lot of them raise. I went through it too in my business when I started. Well, really until sort of much later in my career, I'd be the only woman that I was working for. The executive producers would be guys. My crew, my camera person, my sound, production assistant, whatever. I was the only woman, and I had to run that crew, and it was guys. And these are like, tech guys, right? I mean, and I'm short. So, that was a double whammy, right? So short little woman coming in there. Back then I was like really skinny and everything, you're younger, you're skinny. I was this little wisp, and I had to
Yeah.
come in there and I had to run that crew if I was going to make a film.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you have to learn to how to wrangle that, how to work, how to act, how to be in charge. But also, like you said, it's interesting. Once people got to work with me, I had a lot of people guys,
Yeah.
who wanted to work with me over and over again. Because some people, and then this is what I hope, and this is partially what I hope that happens with us with the podcast, is that people will either, on one hand, people who are like us, who are non-mainstream, get to tell their stories, get to talk about their stories, get to talk about their journeys, and people who are of the mainstream get to hear this in a
Yeah.
way that they can hear things, and so that sometimes when you meet someone and get to know them, they become the exception for you. But what I mean, in the sense that, oh, you are a person, oh, we have all these commonalities, oh, which to me is silly, but to a lot of people it's surprising because of the way society has raised all of us, right? That white, blonde, or whatever is the goal, which can only be achieved through peroxide or birth.
Yeah.
um but I think that when you don't know someone and you don't know that there are other stories, you just rely on the stereotypes, and that's the mold we want to break. I mean,
No,
definitely.
exactly. And I think I have been insanely curious from my earliest memory. I was never content with just accepting what was in front of me or who was in front of me. I was always interested in finding out more. I was inquisitive, curious, all of those things, a lot of time to my detriment as well. But I think that is because, in part, because of our history, our backgrounds, our environments, growing up and working as well, to the point where I can be on a video call in a meeting and I can spot the person who is the other. I just know it. I just know it. And I
Yeah.
gravitate to them because I just think, yeah, especially if they're quiet, or I think like, I don't know, I feel like they're not feeling like they're part of the group. I just think, right then, I need to help you become part of the group because I just think I know what that feels like. And I just don't want anyone ever to feel that if it can be prevented.
I'm with you, and I mean, also for selfish reasons, for personal reasons, because I know what it's like, but for selfish reasons, like, there's so many stories. Why do we want to limit stories? We need all stories to be told, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But again, it's that assuming, it's relying on stereotypes. And
Yeah.
that's what we want to break by opening up and allowing or becoming a platform for people, that are outside of the mainstream to tell their stories, whether it's a fictional story, a true story, or how they got to where they are, the kinds of stories they want to tell. I mean, I think that's really important, and it can be a place for everybody to come to learn, to open up to different cultures, different
Yeah.
lifestyles, different ways of thinking. And you don't have to agree,
No.
right? But
I
it
think it's
doesn't
actually
hurt
healthy.
to be
It's
aware.
actually healthy to it's healthy to have a debate
Yeah.
and not agree on everything because oh my God, how boring would that be?
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and diverse thinking is just the best. But I just realizing that our stories both feature mixed race protagonists. They're very rich in culture, I think. Mine coming from working class background in a working class town in Wales, yours in the 1930s in the US.
Yep.
When segregation and all the bloody horrible things were rife.
Yep.
And yeah, yet the themes are the
Are
same.
universal.
Yeah, and 100 years apart, and you
Yeah.
know, thousands of miles apart as well. It's bonkers, absolutely bonkers.
It is bonkers, but I mean, I guess that just goes to show you that there are these human stories, and at the same time, there's a lot of good and fun and amazing stuff happening because our stories are finally starting to be told,
Oh, I
right?
know. I can't tell you how happy I just smile when when I see a new documentary or a new film and I see the cast,
Yes.
how Black Panther raked in the dollars. I
Oh
was
my
like,
God, right?
The
Yeah,
Woman King. I said to my husband, we got to go to the cinema to watch The Woman King. And he said, why? Because like we could have watched it. And I was like, no, I have to
gotta
give my
support.
money. Yeah, because I want to be part of the statistics.
Yes,
That shows, I want to be like, I watched The
that's
Woman
right.
King. And it was brilliant. And I'm not just saying that because of my own biases, let's say, but it just was brilliant. There's loads of brilliant stories. There's room for everybody. There's room for every story.
Exactly. There's room for everybody. There's room for every story. The more stories, the better. I mean, honestly. And so, I'm hoping we can do that. And I'm also happy to say, because I've harped on the Black West thing, that's fine. Those stories are finally coming out. They have a whole new. This is by the time people hear this, but Bass Reeves TV show. That's one of the guys.
Yeah.
Characters, historical characters that, of course, I was highlighting in the thing I was developing 20 years ago. And I'm just thrilled. It's not me who brought it to the screen, but I am just thrilled that it's finally those stories are getting out there. Because you know what? It makes everything far more interesting and not complex in a good way. So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited about being able to talk to writers and bloggers, people from different things, not just writers or authors, but also journalists and bloggers and
Yeah.
documentarians and stuff about stories, about the stories they're creating or stories that they really just, struck them. So I'm super excited about our new podcast.
Because we're gonna have company along the way, and it's gonna be the conversations. I just wanna find out more about everybody else. Yeah, and we'll continue doing what we do by paying it forward.
The more stories, the better. Everyone's welcome. I can't wait. I really can't wait.
Me neither. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into conversations with marginalized writers.
We hope you'll join us as we embrace not fitting the mold.
Instead, help us break it.
Always the Other, conversations about writing from the margins will premiere spring 2024 wherever you get your podcasts. We hope you'll join us.